All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our November the 16th SWIM School Board meeting. Thanks, Tracy, for bumping that up a little bit. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do a quick roll call, make sure all the board members made it in. I think I can see everybody. Director Koo?
Oops, sorry about that. Here.
All right. Director Jeffries?
I'm here. Thank you.
All right. Director Pickens?
Hello. Good evening. I am here.
And Director Stauffer?
Yes. Hi, I'm here.
All right. Great. Thank you all. So if we could, let's all stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let me get to my notes here real quick. Okay. So as we see at this point, we are still currently under in virtual meeting protocol. Particularly in light of the new statements by our governor. So everybody please be safe out there. So public comments will be taken in a written format and then can be sent to either Tracy T. Norman at swimschools.org or schoolboard@swimschools.org by 5:30 on the Monday prior to the meeting. And just please ask all those in attendance, including board members, to keep yourself muted unless you're going to speak, and any of those others in attendance joining us tonight to please make sure you stay muted. This meeting is being recorded at this time, and if we could, Director Pickens, can you read our vision and mission statement?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Our vision, our community inspires and prepares each student to thrive. And our mission, in connection with our community, the SWIM School District empowers staff to inspire hope and provide flexible, innovative learning opportunities in a safe and respectful environment so each student thrives.
All right, thank you. And Director Koo, could you read our acknowledgement of the land we stand on this evening?
Yes, sir. Be happy to. We acknowledge the land we stand on. The SWIM School District administrative and school buildings sit on the ancestral lands of the Sklallam people. While the Sklallam traditionally come from one nation, history has led to the formation of three sovereign Sklallam tribal governments. These include the Lower Elwha Sklallam tribe, Jamestown Sklallam tribe, and the Port Gamble Sklallam tribe. The district's primary partnership is with the Jamestown Sklallam tribe. Today, the tribe and district share a partnership that includes official consultation on program and funding changes that may directly affect American Indian and Native students, as well as holistic service planning for students to remain successful in their education journeys.
All right, thank you. Great job. It's a mouthful. Okay, well, this evening, let's see, we have a special presentation this evening, and we are pleased to have with us our friends from DA Davidson to talk about our potential levies coming up. So I will turn it over to Dr. Prine and DA Davidson.
Okay, so Corey is here, and Corey is who? Corey and John Gore's. Corey, is John here as well?
Yes, I am. I'm
Hi.
here.
Okay, I will let them take it away. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Prine. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I was thinking back today. My time with the district goes back to, wow, I think Dr. Lou Mormon, and before that, I've had the pleasure to work with the district for many years, as well as a lot of your neighbors, Port Angeles, Chimacum, Cape Flattery, Willamette Valley. So again, it's a pleasure for me to be here along with my colleague, Corey. We have a two-part presentation tonight. The first is to give you a historical look at election results across the state, what's have been happening with the EP&O levies, capital levies, and bond issues. And then Corey's put together some information specific to SQUIM, looking at your election history, looking at your tax rates, what was communicated to the voters, what was actually on the tax statements, and then looking at an assessed valuation as well. So with that, you should hopefully see the screen in front of you with our presentation. So on the first page, the inside page, is an overall look at election results dating back to the year 2000. You can see that in 2020, the success rate was down to 89%, which is the lowest that we have seen since we passed the simple majority, which was passed in 2007 and took effect in 2008. 167 EP&O levies on the ballot in 2020 with an 89% passage. 2019 was 92%, and then 2018 we were at the more typical 97%. So we're starting to see somewhat of a declining trend in overall voter support. On the next page are the capital projects levies, and these have had continued success. You see this year, we had 48 on the ballot with a 90% passage. In 2018 was the high watermark for capital projects levies, where we had 65 on the ballot and a 97% passage rate. Wow. A number of those were for technology and they were replacement levies, but we also know districts were managing tax rates, trying to produce stable tax rates as they saw the decline coming with McCleary. On the next slide, you'll see that school bonds haven't fared quite as well. This year, 33% with 24 issues on the ballot. Would have been slightly higher, but Aberdeen School District failed in February by 1 vote, which is heartbreaking. And then given the pandemic, they decided not to rerun. So clearly every vote counts, and that's certainly true in Aberdeen. So it's been a difficult, challenging school bond issues in the state. On the next page, we'll look at the passing rates by month. And one of the questions we often get asked is, when is the best levies or bonds? And you can see from this chart, and this is a lot of data. This is a very large sample size going back to the year 2000. And you can see February is traditionally the best time to run for your EP&O levies, followed by April. What was interesting this year, though, in February, we had 12 school districts not pass in February. That's the most we have seen in decades. Then 4 of those reran in April. And out of the 4, 3 passed. And then 5 decided to run in August, thinking that by that time we'd have COVID under control and kids back in school, or at least a plan for kids back in school. Unfortunately, the 5 that ran, that none of them passed. It was 0 for 5. And then in November, we had a few that ran and they passed as well. But right now we have 6 districts across the state that have double levy failures. 5 that are true double levy failures. The 6th was a district that ran what was called a supplemental levy. You might recall the legislature gave the authority to increase the rate from $1.50 to $2.50. You could run a supplemental levy if you'd already passed an earlier levy at $1.50, and that district had failed that twice. So truly 5 double levy failures, which again is the most that we've seen in decades. But February is the best, followed by April. School bond issues do fairly well in November, especially, interestingly enough, November of a presidential election. This presidential election, though, there were no school bonds on the ballot. So you can see that traditionally it's been February and April for the best time to run bonds and levies. One of the next slides you'll see is one that we've been tracking for some time and have still always had some reservations about it, because intuitively it just doesn't make sense that you would run an EP&O levy and a capital levy on the same ballot, and your chance of success is better than if you run them separately. So that often just doesn't hold true, but this is true for the district, where the district ran the capital projects and the EP&O and was successful doing that. And this is, again, a large sample size. We also looked at it, Eastern Washington versus Western Washington, and found that it was true across the entire state. So again, it is an interesting time. Now, I will tell you that in April, we had a school district who failed their EP&O levy, but passed their capital levy. And that was a first. We've never had that happen. Speculation is that the capital levy was for technology, which in April was a very top of mind subject for voters because of the distance learning. And the tax rate was appreciably lower. So it was interesting. That was the first time. We've never had a school district pass a bond issue and fail the EP&O. And so we used to be able to say we've never seen the district fail an EP&O and pass a capital project, but that did change this year. So that was interesting. So at this point, I'll turn it to my colleague to talk specifically about SQUIM. So Corey?
Yeah, thank you. So as John reviewed the statewide numbers and some of the trends, and some of them are quite alarming to see the school district support start slowly wane after the McCleary lawsuit was finally in 2018, and then to see what's happening in response to COVID. So we put together some informational slides that starting on the next page that show specific information related to SQUIM. So if we move to the next page, we can see the election history that's since the year 2006. And Tracy, there we go. A couple things stand out to me is the overwhelming support for EP&O and capital levies. To see numbers in the high 60% range is very rare throughout our state and only happens at a select number of school districts. Another thing that stands out is the district has a history of running EP&O and capital from February, which we find to be the most successful month from a statistical perspective. And some may argue that trends can kind of be thrown out the door during COVID, but at the same time, the history is there supporting February. And then lastly is that you can see that the success was there when the district paired the EP&O with the capital levy in 2017. So overall, including the bonds, which are extremely difficult to pass, we're seeing a high level of support here at the school district. On the next slide, we have a list of your bond assessed valuation. This is the base values of information that we use to estimate tax rates. And one thing that the chart will show on page 8 is a steady increase to the size of the economy of SQUIM school districts since about the year 2014. There was some contraction after the financial markets and the housing crisis from 2008 to 2010, which lingered for a few years. And now we're in this upswing, which is a combination of reassessments of existing property and a significant amount of new construction to the community, which spreads some of the responsibility of paying for the EP&O levy amongst new taxpayers. So in the last 5 years, the average is around 8%. And we think that the preliminary value for 2021 is really along the same lines as your 5-year average. We did get updated information from your timber assessed value, and that's slowly starting to decrease as the certain forestation practices change, but overall very strong community from a perspective of the tax base. On slide 9, we did a quick recap of your EP&O levy history. So some of these things we think it's important to revisit the history as you look forward. And some of these slides might generate questions as you're looking to set your ballot resolution for the voters in February. But this shows that ever since 2013, it's been a relatively level process here, and the district has operated underneath the maximum levy authority. So you see there's no rollback. So when we say rollback here, that means that the voters approved an amount that was higher than the state law at the time, and so they had to roll back. So what this chart tells me is that the district has asked voters to approve a levy historically that's been underneath the limits set by state law. So many districts are approving amounts but have to actually collect less than the voters approved because the state lid was there at a different amount. So this shows me that the past resolutions have asked for an amount each year underneath the state law amount. And they weren't forced to put a lid on it or cut some of that levy collection to comply with state law. So moving forward, what does that look like? A combination of the assessed value with these levies. What does it look like for a tax rate? And on the next page, we have a history of the tax rates from 2010 all the way forward to projecting to 2021. And that'll be on page 10. Not sure if you can you still hear me, Tracy?
I can. There's a little bit of delay when I scroll things. Can you see what you need now?
There we go. Great. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yes, on page 10, this is a summary of the tax rates, and in green is what we used to call the maintenance and operations levies. Now they're more commonly referred to as education program and operation levies. And what you'll notice is over the time since about 2014, these strong assessed valuation increases of the community have decreased the tax rates. And in 2018 and 19, when McCleary was adopted, there were new limits put upon the district that was either a tax rate of $2.50 or a $2,500 amount per pupil. So the district had an additional limit put upon them, which made the tax rate drop even lower. And you can see in brown the capital projects and TVF levies over the time, and then back between 2010 and expiring in 2014 was the final payments for those bonds. So in 2021, based on preliminary assessed valuation from the county and the amounts approved in the last ballot by voters, the estimate is that the tax rate will be $1.22 next year with that capital levy expiring. So we project the rate to go from $1.96 to $1.22. So these are the tax rates that the administration and school board of SCWM sets and has local control over. On page 11, we added the same chart, but we overlaid the state schools tax. And the state schools tax has been something that's always been in the background and something that we never used to talk about before McCleary. And in light gray, you can see the state schools tax grows in times of recession and shrinks in times of the economic booms because of the limitations put on the tax by the RCW and WAC. And in 2018, the McCleary tax was passed. So that's a new tax. So unlucky for us, there are 4 taxes on a tax statement that have the word school on them, even though 2 of them are completely out of our control. So for example, in 2020, in green and brown are our EP&O and capital levy. And then the $2 and $1.08 are the state schools tax, which is the amount that the state collects and goes to Olympia. And at that point is reapportioned out to school districts based on their enrollment and other factors in special ed, a learning assistance program, et cetera, and transportation. So what we're noticing is some of the complications with passing levies has a little bit to do with this new McCleary tax and something that we may see in certain areas called tax fatigue. Even though these tax rates for the most part are somewhat similar to what we've seen in 2013, they were significantly elevated from 2017 based on that McCleary school tax. And one thing you'll notice in 2019 is it dropped by about 35 cents. That was because representatives in Olympia were hearing from voters that this was just too much. The McCleary tax was a little bit too much. And so they said, we're going to find a way to lower this tax by either approving some capital gains tax or a carbon tax. And they were unable to come to an agreement in Olympia. So they used a rainy day fund for 1 year, but now we're right back up to where we were essentially in 2018. So we're not certain what this tax rate is going to look like in the future, but we think it's going to look a lot like it does in 2020 moving forward. With that being said, the projection for 2021 is somewhat similar to the tax rate we saw in the years of 2012 to 2014. So you might ask yourself, what's the responsibility of the district to educate the community on these state schools tax? And while they do have the word school there, we think it's important to be prepared to answer any kind of questions from the community to make sure you're sharing the transparency of these tax rates. At the same time, these aren't under our guidance and we have no responsibility to set these tax rates. So we think it's important to know these amounts and share what we know with the taxpayers, but we're not sure if this is something that is our responsibility per se, as much as it is to be aware of it and be able to answer any questions from the community when these arise. And there's a lot of resources on the Department of Revenue webpage that point to how these taxes are created, how the assessor adjusts them for different counties. And there's a lot of information out there on the Department of Revenue website. But we think it's important that administrators and school board members know this is something that the voters are paying attention to, and some are quite frustrated with this new state McCleary tax. On slide 12, this is something that we like to create that shows what did the Sequim School District Board in past ballots ask for of the voters and what had actually happened. If you look at green, in the greens amounts, let's just start in 2014, for example, the ballot was listed at $1.61, and that was for a 4-year levy. And if you'll notice, the actual was $1.62, $1.60, $1.52. So what this graph shows is since 2014, really, the district has been very accurate in their estimations of what the tax rate would be. Even with calculating a 4-year levy, they've done a really excellent job of estimating what the tax rate will be and what the actual will be. We hate to see like what happened when the property values started going backwards in 2012. The actual rate was a little bit higher than the ballot was stated. Those were rare times in which the economy was contracting significantly. And if you'll notice, recent years, the district has estimated and the property assumptions have exceeded expectations. And therefore, what was asked of the voters is not what's being collected. For example, in 2020, the request was for $1.55 in tax rate, and the actual came in at $1.29. So the district is outpacing the ballot from a perspective of tax rate actual to projection. On the next slide, slide 13 shows the last levy projection that we completed for the district. And what this shows is the 2020 actual levy and levy rates for the EP&O and capital levy for a total of about $1.96 tax rate. And in 2020, this is a projection based on the preliminary assessed valuations from the county and the preliminary timber values. And we project that to be $1.22. Now, the difficult task in front of the district is to determine what is the proposed levy and levy rate for 2022 and onward. And in this scenario, we ran a 4-year projection. And what would a 3-year capital levy look like at a flat 75-cent tax rate? So these estimates were created for the administration using an AV assumption of only 2%, which sounds a little bit conservative, but noticing that your EP&O levies are based on enrollment, the district did increase enrollment per year, just in case as a buffer should the enrollment recoup from the struggles that have come about from COVID. So I did look ahead of the agenda, and I saw that Darlene is going to share a little bit of information on the enrollment issues that we're seeing statewide. But your EP&O levy is essentially set to what the state levy lid is, and the EP&O levy rate is a projection based on that levy lid and your population. So to be frank, the EP&O levy is dependent upon enrollment, which is now down because of COVID. So some of these numbers may not be realized. So for example, in 2022, after the state calculates your levy lid, the levy lid may come in at 6.9, just like similar to 2021. In that scenario, the board would need to roll back the levy to that 6.9 amount for collection through the county assessor. So just because these proposed amounts are on ballot, they'll still must comply with state law and will not be able to collect more than the levy lid law based on your per pupil, your enrollment times the per pupil amount. And the capital levy is a little bit more simple, a little bit more straightforward. There's no limitations on a capital levy by statute, just limits based on logic and based on what the community is willing to support for the improvement in infrastructure. So these were amounts that were requested by the administration that we run a 75-cent estimate to see what kind of capital levy that would generate for improvements to the facilities. So before I move on to the next slide, are there any questions on these proposals that we submit to the district?
I don't have any here, Corey. I don't know if any of my other fellow board members do. I don't see any hands at this point.
Well, I can still, please interrupt if there are any questions, but I can move on to slide 14, which shows a graphical representation of what this EP&O levy and capital levy look like for the long term.
Sounds good.
Trace, if you move to slide 14, on slide 14, 2021 is still a projection, but 2022 and 2025 are based on the proposed amounts that we provided the administration. And it shows you that the goal of the administration at that time was to create a $2, a tax rate not to exceed $2. And that's on slide 14. And on slide 15, it's the same information, however, overlaid with the state schools tax. So those two slides essentially are what we just looked at a few slides ago, but just updated with the proposed amounts and what that looked like overall. And then one more slide that would be after that would be slide 16. Slide 16 is just a reminder that the resolution filing dates are Friday, December 11th. So of course, I know that's why the board is meeting at this time to review these amounts. But the December 11th filing date is posted on page 16, along with approximate date of ballots to be mailed. And that is January 22nd. We would love it if you checked in with the county just in case they put those ballots out a little early. The reason we post this date is should the district be sending out any kind of informational materials. While the district is not allowed to campaign, a levy committee of volunteers may do those kind of activities, but the district, if they're sending out an informational sheet of what the levy pays for, what the rates are, we think it's a good idea to at least meet or beat this date that the ballots are mailed for those people that don't have maybe a direct connection to the school district. That way they can have questions answered before they get that ballot in the mail. I think I've heard John mention that many voters, sometimes we've seen in survey research, up to a third vote right away, so right when they get their ballot. So it's important to get those informational materials out as soon as possible. And that's the end of our prepared materials, but we'd be happy to entertain any questions the board may have.
Hang on, I'm hitting my mute and unmute button too many times. Okay, thank you, John and Corey. It was very informative. Appreciate all the back data as well. And I think Director Koo's got his hand up. So Brian, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Gentlemen, great to hear you. Sorry we can't see you tonight, but appreciate the good work here. This is great information, and no specific questions, a lot to chew on here, but good data. And I appreciate you trying to tap into the COVID zeitgeist too, because that's tough to explain, what folks are thinking. And, as we go forward, regardless of what path we choose, there's always going to be that great unknown. I guess a request, and Tracy, I am so sorry to point this at you, but if I can help, please let me know. Would it be possible to get this presentation carved out as a separate video, perhaps that we could share to start evangelizing, or at least laying the groundwork for whatever direction we go?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. You're not alone in this time of running an election. During COVID, there's, I believe, 50 plus districts that are all going to do at least an EP&O levy this February. So there's a lot of people out there looking at how to reach out to their voters in a unique time.
Great, thank you.
And I think to your other question, Brian, that the way the recording is laid out, you can just go to that section in the agenda and it'll pull it up. So it can be pulled out separately.
Great, thank you.
Director Stoffer.
Yes, thank you to John and Corey for being here, and outstanding information as usual. And I'm ready to place it on the ballot. So thank you for your assistance.
You're welcome.
Olivia.
Yes, hello. So I just know that in order to get it enough votes, and I just saw from the stats you were showing us that it hasn't been going as smoothly as we thought. So how can I, as a student, get my voice out saying that this is what we need to do to better our schools? I just want to be more involved, I guess, in the whole process.
And John, I'll go ahead and hop in here on that really quick. I think the student's name is Olivia. Olivia, we've seen some of the most successful school districts successful because of student involvement. And whether that's locally or sharing information, we noticed there were a handful of school districts that were struggling to pass levies in the Puget Sound area. And not until the student became involved and shared their voice on what they needed out of the local community did it start to receive even more support. So I think reaching out to your superintendent, your principals, for how they can support you, greatly appreciated. And we noticed that when the students are involved, that there's much more support from the community.
Exactly. Sorry, go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would just add that your social media skills could certainly be useful to a district as well, trying to spread their message, especially in the younger voters.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I think it would help to try to get the student perspective and seeing where we come from as a student and what we need in our schools. So I will work on that. Thank you.
And you may be surprised of how many 18 to 25-year-old just past students don't vote in the February elections. They may vote in November, but in February, we have a really hard time getting the 18 to 25-year-olds vote in those buildings and see what the local levy contributes to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Olivia, and we really appreciate having our students active in that process as well. I know it's been helpful with us in the past, and moving forward, it'll definitely be helpful. Director Pickens.
Thank you, and appreciate the presentation. And one of the things I was watching really closely is the strategies and that Port Angeles recently went through with passing some of their recent measures. And I know that one of the things they really seem to focus on, or two things I should say, One was that, and traditionally I had thought of capital levies more as not for new construction necessarily. I think of bonds as new constructions, but I think they took a different approach and wanted to gear They said that we could gear capital levies towards new constructions, and I think the other approach they took was trying to maintain a consistent tax rate over a very long period of time. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to that, if those are strategies that are more specific to that area, or can we utilize any of those strategies as well?
Well, certainly correct on the capital projects levies, that those can be used for new construction. They go from a 1 to a 6-year term. So oftentimes we see, and in the case of Port Angeles as well, where they're using it to jumpstart a long-range capital plan, because from a tax rate perspective, it's certainly going to be less burdensome to the taxpayer by being able to spread the tax rate over a 20-year period, which is the typical term for a bond issue, has more equity within a community as newer people are moving in. But it is a way to get a past election, focus on a highly visible project that then, with the hope you can then do so much more by spreading that term out over 20 years through a voted bond. And voted bonds are hard because of the 60% supermajority. One thing that's come up in a number of conversations we've had with districts over the last several weeks has been capital levies and EP&O levies do not have a validation requirement. So we had, as you all know, a very significant turnout in November. That does not affect the numbers. It's still simple majority, straight simple majority for capital levies, as well as the EP&O. Bond issues, however, still have the 40% validation requirement.
Okay, great.
Director Stoffer, do you have your hand back up?
Yeah, just an add-on. Superintendent Bryant presented this at the Chamber Board meeting last week, and the Chamber Board, so that's then the membership, is endorsing both the EP&O and the capital projects levy. So we have people in the community already advocating for us, which is very good on that.
Awesome, thank you. Yep, Director Jeffries.
Yeah, I was just going to thank DA Davidson for a great presentation, lots of good information. The graphics are very understandable and usable, and I saved them, of course, and I'll be looking at those intently as we go through this process. But just thank you very much for your expert help and your ability to communicate information to boards, and I'm sure some of it will be used to educate the voters as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, thanks again, guys. It's always a pleasure to have you come speak to us again and provide us with the information as you do when we're going through this process. I think we're good for questions at this point. We have a workshop tomorrow to kind of sit down and work out some details and move forward. Looking forward to getting this out on the ballot and seeing what happens.
Well,
Best
again,
of luck to you.
Yes,
and
please.
let us know how we can help.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, great. Well, that was good having them again. Good information as usual, and we move on with some action items.
Mr. Chair, move to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, there we go. We have a motion on our minutes. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second.
All right, wonderful. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? Right, next up, any changes to our agenda? None that I'm aware of. So approval of our agenda as it stands. Need a motion?
Mr. Chair, move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? Okay, next up, we have our consent agenda.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a couple of seconds there. Any discussion?
Yeah, just appreciate the teachers who step up for the additional roles and recognize them with this approval.
All right, wonderful, thanks. Yes, definitely appreciate that. Anything else? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? All right, motion carries. Okay, next up, we don't have any public comments sent in at this time. And so with that said, we will move to our senior representative, Olivia Preston, for her presentation.
Thank you. I would just like to start off with saying that we as students don't like blame anyone or anything, because I know that like a lot of parents are getting angry about not being able to come back to school or have sports, and we totally understand that this is a pandemic and that you guys are human and we are human, and like from a student perspective, sometimes can't control how much we respond, because when we start to take away things, it's like it's frustrating, but we don't blame you. But OK would like to share their middle level history and ELA classes are working on reading and study of the U.S. Constitution, bills, which includes limited government powers, checks and balances, research projects on one of the signers of the Constitution, emphasis on electoral college and governments, study U.S. history through the Civil War through maps and primary sources, which include presentations on an early colony, ancient history, early societies, the start of civilization, presentations of an early empire. They're doing these weekly.
Olivia, we're losing you a little bit there.
In our COVID reality. Okay, did you hear the
That's okay.
SMS part?
And I would just ask to make sure, I think we might have a couple of people that are not muted at this time. So just re-verify that you are muted, because sometimes any back noise can help affect that. All right, you got it, Olivia.
Thank you. So SMS would like to share that Wave 2 is underway, and everyone in the building is glad they do not have Miss Ward's role in the COVID reality. She, like the other assistant principals, is our COVID compliance officer, so she gets the late night and early morning calls from our staff whenever potential illness or COVID concerns arise. Once staffing is addressed, she and Miss Hastings recheck schedules to make sure every classroom has 2 or more students or a second adult supervisor. Since our students are moving through an abbreviated half schedule in our hybrid model, every day means a new pattern of movement for our para teams and office staff to ensure coverage. We are blessed to have a team that adapt and adjust for students missing as classes end. As another way, we are trying to move away from the factory model of education. You wouldn't hear any bells this year. We're continuing with our efforts to use our tools to help students be ready for learning, so that we use that passing period to allow them to reset themselves as this move between classes. Mr. Harris announced at the end of the grade adds on a moment in history through the hall during the passing period. As students move to their next school in high school, would like to share that their ASB students put together a Veterans Day assembly that was posted on social media. They have a scholarship notebook workshop / fast food informational night Zoom this evening at 6:30 p.m. for students and their parents. Teachers have made videos for parents to access before Wednesday, and then there will be a Zoom Wednesday evening. And then at PC, we're registering for classes right now, so it's kind of chaotic, and we're just finishing up our quarter. And that was all I had today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for the earlier comments regarding the students. We appreciate that, Olivia. All right. Next up, we have our junior representative, Alyssa Beeby.
Hi, thank you. For Helen Heller, they said that today was a busy day for Helen Heller Elementary. The online book fair was today, and it was a success. The school also welcomed the students of 4th and 5th grade classes back with the AA system. PTO winter plant sale orders were due today, and this was a big achievement considering the situation we are on right now. We want to thank the teachers, our staff, and the school board for always being ready to help and to make these days better for everyone. As for Grey Wolf, they said that today the elementary school welcomed back the 4th and 5th graders with the AA system. This week on November 18th is the library curbside pickup and return of the books from noon until 3 p.m. On November 19th, the 4th and 5th graders of the BB system will attend the school grounds. The staff and the teachers here at Grey Wolf are always ready and available for every question and difficulty that the students have. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Alyssa. All right. Next up, we have board communication. And I'm going to lead off this evening just with a little quick statement here. So on behalf of the Sequim School District Board, I would like to thank the individuals who have submitted correspondence to us. As we hope everyone is aware, the Board of Directors follows the policies and procedures set forth in our Sequim School District Policy Manual, which are driven by applicable laws and regulations. We are working to get these situations resolved as thoroughly and expeditiously as possible. Please understand that employee privacy is protected under both the Public Record Act, which discusses what is subject to public disclosure and what is exempted from disclosure, as well as the OPMA. Under the Public Records Act, RCW 42-56-23-230, personal information that would violate an employee's right to privacy per RCW 42.56.050 is exempted from disclosure. And under the OPMA RCW 42.30-110 executive sessions, a governing body can hold an executive session during a regular or special meeting to evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment or to review the performance of public employees. All right. With that said, I'll just kind of go on with my statements for the day. It was good hearing from both of our student representatives, and appreciate especially hearing about more kids coming back to school and the great work that our teachers are doing to make that happen. And I know it's a struggle and a lot of work, but again, we just appreciate all that they're doing. I know that the kids were probably excited getting back and being able to see their friends, but I know that we're also following all proper safety protocols in light of the current situation as we move forward. So again, great thanks to all the staff within the district for the hard work that they're doing, and really appreciate that. And that's all I've got. So I'll go on to the rest of our board members. Director Koo, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, not principal, my goodness, President Gibson, and beautifully said as well. I want to start by thanking you, Olivia, for your comment earlier. That really means a lot. And also your thoughtfulness on how students can be engaging on the levy requests. I agree with comments made earlier about my excitement to get that going, and look forward to discussing later in this agenda. Dr. Prine, I just want to say thank you again for stepping in during this critical period for our district, and specifically really appreciate your quick action on the weekend, on a Sunday no less, after the governor's announcement. Poor President Gibson had to endure my my texts of questioning of this or that, but I really appreciate how that was handled, and moving and leading nimbly in the moment. I've got to give a shout out, and this certainly isn't at the exclusion of anyone else, but Principal Stanton and her dedicated staff for today's in-person opening for the 4th and 5th grade at Helen Haller Elementary. Selfish benefit is my own little doppelganger getting back into class. It did him so good, so well to have that. So I'm just one example of many students in the district, but that was a meaningful milestone for him, but also for us as parents as well. So thank you for everything, the Herculean effort to get us to this point, and everything you've done before. Just please extend my personal gratitude. And then finally, I think I'll just close with saying I really enjoyed today's discussion executive session. As such, I won't discuss the details, but appreciate the opportunity to have had it. So to our board leadership, thank you for setting that up. That was good, and I think it was an example of striving for excellence and having the courage to call out areas for improvement in our processes. So enjoyed that. Look forward to discussing further at the appropriate time and date. And that's all I have.
Where's my mic button? There it is. All right. Thank you, Brian. Director Jeffries.
Yeah, I would join Director Koo in congratulating and thanking the staff and the students and the parents of all our students as we go through this process of bringing kids back while still doing remote learning. And I know it's still a very stressful time. Our community has done a pretty good job of keeping our numbers down. I noticed today it's creeped up quite a bit to about 71 per 100,000. So we need to keep an eye on that for the next few days, so that if we have to make adjustments, and hopefully instead of that, we can get a hold of this and get our numbers back down. Since our last board meeting, I've attended several WASDA functions, which I find very useful because we get to see and talk to and listen to board directors from all across the state. And they all have similar problems to the ones we're having, so it's very useful. I enjoyed the SQUIM, the joint meeting with the SQUIM City Council. I think we need to do that more often on a regular basis, and probably put something together, before the bond issue, or excuse me, the levies come out, sometime in, I don't know, December is a good time or not, but January, to meet with the city council. I think that would be great. The board policy review is going great, and I'm looking forward to that process so we can get through all of these board policies and get them up to date. Tracy and her team is doing a fantastic job. This week I'm looking at my calendar and looking at all kinds of WASDA meetings coming up for our annual conference, which originally was scheduled for Spokane, but now it's all virtual. And so that's going to be kind of exciting and different, but I'm looking forward to that. Also, I really appreciated Olivia mentioning student help with the levy. We got a levy workshop tomorrow, I think at 4 o'clock. If one or both of the students could attend that, just to get involved with that. And later on,
to the board meeting.
And then later on, we will have assume something similar to Citizens for SQUIM schools will get started, and getting involved with them would be appropriate too. So that's about all I have for right now. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Larry. Director Stopper.
Yes, thank you. First, thank you to our students. Always value your voice here on the board and in the community, and the staff with, as Director Koo mentioned about bringing our 4th and 5th graders back in. Such a milestone. I am a little concerned with the upticks in the COVID, and so we want to keep a tight watch on that, and that's everybody's responsibility to do our due diligence and all the safety protocols. From there, Director Jeffries mentioned the work session we had with the city, and I think that was highly beneficial and successful. Good conversations, dialogue between city council members and the 2 legislators that were able to make it. There is a couple of upcoming coffee chats with EDC, the Economic Development Council, where I believe the first one is, I think Representative Theringer will be on it, and then the following Wednesday, Representative Chapman. And so those are other good areas to connect with our legislators. And then I was thinking about last week a lot, because typically our high school choir gets in a bus and they go over to Port Angeles to the Clallam County Veterans Observation Ceremony. And 2 of us were given the honor in the past of riding along that bus as chaperones and then attending it in person. And so missed those days, but I want to thank my fellow veterans here on this board with Director Gibson and Director Pickens. And I know there's a lot of family members and there's a lot of veterans among our staff. And so with that, I picked up a new book the other day by Lieutenant Dan or Gary Sinise called The Grateful American, from Journey from Self to Service. So just to try to change some focus from some Zoom meetings, but that's all I have, and thank you again.
All right, thank you. Director Pickens.
Thank you. Just first wanted to say I appreciated the presentation again. I'm looking forward to the presentation on capital levy and EP&O. Looking forward to getting that on the ballot. I think it's so important that our zip code doesn't necessarily determine the facilities that we're learning in, and I want to make sure that we have facilities that are meeting the needs of our students. So also attended the joint session with the city council, which I thought was very beneficial, and I look forward to more opportunities to collaborate with partners to help with that work. I think there's a lot of alignment a lot of times with folks regarding our legislative priorities. So I want to make sure that we're advocating appropriately. So I appreciated that opportunity, and I think there might be an upcoming opportunity here soon to collaborate with potentially the Port Angeles School Board. So I'm hoping that all of our board can be present for that. Also, my second grader has started her second week back in the building, and I so appreciate that, and I know for a lot of the families out there, it's something that they've been waiting on. So I feel actually so torn at this point, because it's that in-person education is so necessary, but at the same time, I am also very concerned with some of the rates going up to 71 per 100,000, and I know that kind of puts us in a very difficult spot, because there's some once you reach that 75 threshold, there's some liability issues that come into play, and we're having a fiduciary responsibility to manage that. It is an incredibly difficult position to be in. Trying to balance that, but knowing the need of our students. So I join my fellow colleagues in hoping that we can reduce that and get that under control so that our children in our district can continue to learn in the best environment possible. So with that, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate all your comments this evening. Okay. Next up, we have our finance director, Darlene.
Okay. Well, tonight I am going over budget status reports for October 2020. And just a little disclaimer, these are still estimates. My year-end paperwork, the F-196, has gone to OSPI for their approval. And once they look it through and make sure there are no changes that need to be made, which I probably would have heard already, but I'm not positive. Once they approve that, then we can close out our 1920 school year, and then everything will become actual. So we'll just go over the budget status reports. For the general fund, as you can see, our ending fund balance, because it's the biggest number that pops right out there, is at $4,101,578.19. And just as a point of reference, last year, 2019-20, in October, our ending fund balance was $4,278,523.57, and that large balance is due to the fact that this is a tax collection month. So this is when most of our local levy dollars for the fall would come in, and so they come in and they're there. So that's why it looks so big at month end. As you can see up in expenditures, between our expenditures year to date and the encumbrances we have, which are purchases and payroll and benefits, we have 84.03% of our budgeted expenditures spoken for. Nothing has changed on the general ledger accounts. They still look the same as last month. We've got dollars that are restricted for some for carryover, and so if we had carryover for any grants or anything, that money gets used up first as required, and then this balance comes down or comes off of the GL. Same with debt service. Our last payment for our capital projects levy is December 1st, and so this $15,768 is the interest portion that must come from the general fund to help pay for that. The $500,000 is set aside for capital projects that may need to be done throughout the school year on all of our buildings. And so we know as things happen, we need to make sure that we have some dollars that were budgeted for repairs. Our unassigned minimum fund balance is at $1,894,918, and that's still at 4.6%. I moved it up just a tiny bit from the end of the last school year, so you can see, kind of what it does. And so right now we're have it sitting right there at 4.6%. For capital projects fund, and that's the other fund where a large amount of money gets dumped into capital projects fund due to our capital projects levy. So our ending fund balance right now is $2,156,973.19. Majority of that money will be used to make that final payment December 1st. This money gets transferred from capital projects fund to the debt service fund, and that's how the payments are made on those bonds. Let's see here. Debt service fund, it's got $70,046, and so it's just mostly increasing its ending fund balance due to just a tiny bit of local tax money that comes in, interest, and that's about it. The money goes in to this fund and then comes out to pay bonds. ASB, you can see that due to the state that we're in right now, with a lot of our students in middle school and high school not being on campus and doing a lot of ASB activities, that there's not a lot happening with this fund right now. And so hopefully soon we'll get to have our students back, and then we can start up our extra activities. Transportation Vehicle Fund. We have $628,550 in this fund. This fund is sitting here and will be used as buses need to be purchased. So if there's any buses that need to be purchased this year, Transportation Department will put together, the type of bus that would be needed. And we'd order it, and this is the fund where that bus would be paid for. Also, major repairs. If there's something major that happened to a bus, a new engine or a new, rear end or something very large, we can also use the Transportation Vehicle Fund rather than the general fund to repair the bus. Does anyone have any questions on the budget status reports? So I also always put together a revenue and expense, our expenditure spreadsheet for you. And I have one put together, but it's still an estimate. And I gave Tracy a copy of it today, and you are more than welcome to have it. And everything does line up with our budget status reports at this time. Oh, it looks like she does have it on there. So I'm not sure if anyone has any questions on how to read the spreadsheet and compare it to the budget status reports. And it's just a double check. So when you look at the top of your budget status report in your general fund and you see your actual revenues for the month, it should match down there in the blue. It should match the amount. So the 4,729,981.55 in the October column down at the bottom in the blue where it says total revenues, it's just scroll down just a tiny bit more, Tracy. There, right there. It should match what you see on your budget status reports under actual for month for revenues. And the same when you scroll down to expenditures, it should match the 3,035,988.45, and that should also match on your budget status reports. You should be able to look at the numbers on the spreadsheet and match them up perfectly to the budget status reports if I've entered all of the numbers in correctly. So it's hard to, just like ask a lot of questions and point to things because we can't see each other pointing to things. But if you have any questions about this or you want it to look different as different board members come on, if you want the spreadsheet to look a little bit differently, let me know. The yellow line where the beginning balance and investments you can see at the top, that should line up with, you can see our beginning fund balance estimate for November is the 4,101,578.19, which is our ending fund balance for October. Everything should work correctly on the spreadsheet. So it's just a way to break it down a little bit differently so you can see the breakdown of what's coming in for revenues and going out as expenditures. Okay, anybody have any questions on that?
Like Eric has his hand up there.
Oh, Eric, sorry.
I did have, well, and I don't know if it's the appropriate time or not. I did have a question about the 1920 school year. Did you cover that first?
What I did was, so the 1920 school year is in the process of being closed out, and so it's sitting at OSPI. So when you do your F-196, do all your year-end balancing, it gets approved by the ESD and then gets forwarded on to OSPI. They look through all of your F-196, make sure it all looks appropriate, and then they sign off on it. So that's where we are right now. We're just waiting for that. Once they do that, then I can make sure that I close out 1920 and all of the numbers for budget status reports will be actual next month.
Okay.
They're actually actual unless OSPI makes us change something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you speak to how we finished the year, what our ending fund balance started with and ended with, and any other details you could elaborate on?
Sure. So I was curious myself because as everyone knows, with us missing the last few months of school, it changes things for your ending fund balance. And it can't be any other way. Even though we continued to pay all of our employees and we were fortunate enough to receive all of our apportionment dollars, even possibly a little bit more apportionment than we may have actually gotten due to enrollment and how they figured enrollment, we probably were able to receive apportionment on even a higher enrollment number than if we were actually counting the months of April, May, and June. So in August of 2019, we ended our estimated ending fund balance is $3,370,635.24. In August of 2018-19, our ending fund balance was $2,610,781.41. So it's a difference of approximately $760,000. 17-18, we ended our year with $1,987,000 and a little bit of change, and we had a projected ending fund balance of $1.473 million. So one of the things that I did was I went back to look and see, okay, when we did our budget, where did we think our ending fund balance was going to be and where did it actually end up? And every year it actually ended up being more than what the budgeted projection would be. So, and there could be 50 reasons for that, but I do know that we've talked about why did our district fund balance, why was it increased from what we thought it would be? And it looks like a lot of money, but a lot of it is our needs for substitutes was, a lot less for a couple months. And I can tell you on any given month, for us here, certificated substitutes total about $15,000 a month. That's just an average. So one month we picked and it was $15,000 for certificated subs. When you don't do that for, a few months, then that's quite a bit of money. Our co-curriculars, our coaches in the spring and summer and all the travel for sports, that all came to a stop. Our transportation, while we were paying our employees and we received our revenue for transportation, we didn't have our buses out there, so it's less gas, less maintenance. There's a lot less costs associated with transportation, utility costs. People weren't traveling. We had a lot of dollars budgeted for professional development and travel that goes along with that. That didn't happen. Our enrollment, I'm sure, was based on a little bit higher number than what we anticipated it might be. And then always our July, August apportionments is a little bit higher. They make the percentage that we receive a little bit higher. So our ending fund balance is there, so there are not cash flow problems, and that is done on purpose so districts do not have cash flow issues. A lot of things happened when COVID hit. A lot of things that we would have been spending dollars on while the students were in class, we weren't spending all of those dollars. So even hiring freeze. So things that things that might have happened those last few months, a lot of those things just came to a halt, as we all know. So there's some reasons, why it would be a little bit bigger at the end of August, 1920 compared to what we thought it would be. No one could have predicted this, but I think that a lot of these reasons, and there's some draft forms of things that will be coming out, even why it's important that we have this large of a fund balance to start this new school year. A lot of us have decreased enrollment from what we thought we were going to have, and that's we are going to true up on our apportionment come January, and we could take a hit. So there's that. Decreased transportation funding. They are not beholden to give us transportation funding when our buses are not transporting students into schools to get their educational services that we are to provide. So that's going to be lower. We kind of looking through the list. There's just those are some big ones right there. We're still paying all of our sub costs. We have increased unemployment costs. There's just things that run in the background. So I don't know if that answers your question, but every single year, August comes and our ending fund balance is a little bit higher on purpose, intentional, through apportionment, so that we can start our school year.
Thank you.
I'll move on to enrollment.
I think real quick, Darlene, Larry has his hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. Minimum fund balance and reserve fund or emergency fund, is that the same fund, or those two different chunks of money?
It's all in the same bucket of money. So the ending fund balance of $4.1 million. When you look on the second sheet of your budget status report, you can see how it's broken down. So our minimum fund balance is 1.894918, and then all the other little buckets of money and all these other general ledgers, they equal the 4.1 million. So it's part of that.
And that's part of the 4.6%?
The 4.6 is part of the 4.1. Yeah.
Correct. And that's kind of our goal is to be between 5 and 10. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think our goal is definitely 5%. And as you know, that's big. Just 5%. I think 10% is going to be, unless we had a huge ALE program or that was well oiled and running so smoothly, it will take a while to build this up. But I don't know if we would get to 10%, and that's just me being realistic at this point.
Any idea what the average is for districts our size?
That I don't know. I know that a lot of districts have, policies that state that they want to be around 5% to 7% or 5% to 8%. You start getting too big of a minimum fund balance, and then, why do we have that big of a fund balance when we're educating students? So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Am I right?
I think you're good, Darlene.
Okay. I'll get used to this about the time that we don't have to do it anymore. So our 3-year enrollment graph, and Tracy is the creator of this graph, and so I'm just looking at November, from October, November, up in the top grid in the green. You can see that our bottom number for FTE in October was 2,464.21. student FTE, and now it has dropped 5.66 FTE to 2,458.55. So the decrease is less than from September to October, but still a little bit of a decrease. If you look down at the bottom, that's the equivalent of 10 students from October to November. So hopefully, as more students come back to school, and if we can keep our numbers of COVID cases down, which doesn't sound like that's happening right now, but if we can keep them down and keep our students in school, hopefully that will increase. I don't have any more to add on enrollment. My hope is that between OPA that's down to 92, you know, I don't know if they have a wait list right now, but they do have the capacity to be up at 100. And looks like DVS dropped a little bit. So those are some possible ways to increase our enrollment if students are unenrolling from the brick and mortar. I just don't know why those two are down. We'll have to look into that. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you. Anything last minute things from the board?
Looks like Larry's got his hand up.
I think he left it up.
Oh, okay.
Yep, sorry.
That's all right. I got an eye on it here. All right. Thank you, Darlene. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate all the good work putting those numbers together. All right. Next up, we have Dr. Prine.
Well, hello. I just want to say thank you to Darlene and Victoria and everybody for, and Tracy and Jennifer for all your work and helping me, you know, just get acclimated and moving right along. But I will tell you a couple of things. One of the things that was at the top of my list was the endorsement by the Chamber of Commerce. And I know that Director Stauffer talked about that earlier, but that is the very first time that the Chamber has ever endorsed a levy, and in this case, 2 levies. They normally had a bylaw that said they could not do that. And they said, this is the time for us to really support the schools publicly. And so they came out, and I got an email from Angie, the director, the other day. So that was really exciting. I know people are wondering because the cases are going up, and what is the school district going to do about, you know, having kids in school or sending children home. I will just tell you that we are sitting at 71 cases. We, as the superintendent group in the region, have a meeting tomorrow at 8:30 with Dr. Unthank. And so as I get more information, I will pass it along to all of you so that everybody has the same information. We're not just sitting there wondering, twiddling our thumbs, watching it grow, but we are looking at, you know, our criteria for re-entering students into school and the criteria when we don't want to have students in school. So I can't give you a definitive answer tonight, but I just want you to know we are working on that. And so I will be putting something out most likely tomorrow afternoon or Wednesday at the latest. For those of you that may not have seen the Skyward notice that went home today or the website or Facebook page, Governor Inslee did say that there will be no indoor sports, and so all of those are canceled as of midnight tonight. So I think they had their last practice, and our practices are outdoors, but we will be discontinuing that as well except for football will be played outside through Friday, and then they're discontinuing that. And we are looking at the different schools in the region to see what they're doing and what our risk pool management is advising us to do. So we are being cautious, and I am cautiously optimistic that possibly, you know, we'll be able to not have any more cases and keep our kiddos in school, especially since some of them just started today with our 4th and 5th graders. So Anyway, stay tuned, and you will be hearing more from my office within the next 24 hours on where we are. Tomorrow night we are having a levy meeting, as we discussed earlier, and that levy meeting will go through the small works projects for our capital levy, and the board will prioritize what they deem is most important and where the most needs are for the capital projects. And we will have that discussion tomorrow night at the levy meeting. So I would invite all of you, if you're interested, to attend that meeting. It is a work study session, but we will be discussing the list, the infamous list. And then on the 30th, the board is having a special meeting so that we can approve. We'll be asking the board to approve the resolutions for both levies, and they are two separate ballot measures. And as you saw tonight, we need to get our resolutions into the county by December 11th. And the reason we're having a meeting on the 30th is, in my experience, I would like to get them there before December 11th, and in this case, we'll probably get them to the county on the 1st, so that the attorneys at the county have time to look at our resolutions to make sure that we have worded them correctly. We do everything we can to word them correctly. We talk to everybody we need to talk to, including our own attorneys. But sometimes, in my experience, I've had this experience, the wording isn't exactly the way the county attorney would like it on the ballot. And so we have to get it changed. And so we want to give ourselves ample time in case that happens. I don't think it will. And it's only happened to me once out of several times, but you never know. So anyway, we will be getting our, after the board approves those resolutions, we'll be getting them to the county by the 1st of December. So having said that, I again want to welcome our 4th and 5th graders back today. That was an exciting time. And stay tuned, and you'll hear from me tomorrow. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Dr. Prime. Okay, next up on our agenda, we do have a spot listed for levy discussion. So, we have a workshop to do some more informative discussion tomorrow, go through these different issues, but if anything, anybody has anything that they'd like to talk about at this point. I see Director Koo had his hand up.
Sure, I was battling myself. Just concurring with other directors about, obviously we need to press ahead. I have an extreme bias towards the capital projects levy, knowing that we have a punch list a mile long. Looking forward to the workshop to kind of hone that down. But if you had to quote me on, what I would be willing to approve at this point, it would certainly be both the EP&O, which is absolutely critical, but also the capital projects levy for our students and getting them closer and closer to the resources they deserve.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Director Stauffer.
Yes, concur with that. Then I'll just add annual conference agenda. There's a couple of breakout sessions on levies and couple items that help with the campaigning portion, understanding of it, that would encourage colleagues and our students to attend. Otherwise, I'm ready to approve.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dave Davidson did a great job of the presentation today. We've done a good job over the years of keeping within our tax limit and trying not to burden our taxpayers as too much. And, the two pieces of this, as Director Koo brought up, is yes, really interested in getting rid of that punch list and knocking out some of those items, but also just the importance of the EP&O levy just for our operations, and how devastating it would be if that does not pass at some point. And both of them we need to do. The EP&O levy is a must to just maintain our current operations as it goes forward. And so, we as a district, as a team, have to do everything we can to make sure that happens. I know we're all on the same page, and looking forward to tomorrow to discuss what we're going to put together. All right, next up, just quick, as we know, the end of this week, we have our annual WASDA conference. And one question I have is, have any of my other board members received the actual link invite? Go ahead, Jim.
That will happen tomorrow morning. So start watching your emails.
That's what I figured.
0800. And I put together this quick slide. If you don't mind, I'll cover a couple of the items, or not, whatever.
Well, I mean that's fine. I just I think it's a good piece for everybody to kind of to look at. And the links are there, so definitely appreciate that, and it's on the agenda. So it's good, just like in any case, to get ahead and go in and look at what the options are and the opportunities and get signed up. The only other thing I would say too is would be like to figure out at some point as well. When we're at the conference, we typically have lunch or dinner or the opportunity to just kind of sit around and chat about what we learned throughout the day and all. And I'm going to try to work out maybe some options where we can, figure that piece out as well as we go along. But, appreciate putting that together, and that's available on our agenda to look at. Thanks, Jim.
Yes. One big item though, well, they're all big items, but on Friday or Thursday evening is the director area elections. And so there's 3 spots open, one from the resolutions seat, and then my colleague's seat in the legislative committee, the other one, and then the WASDA board. So a lot of other things on everybody's agenda, but that occurs on Thursday, 7:05 p.m. Before that is Hot Topics, Tim and Chris show, and then a legislative listening tour. Then also there's a Power Student Voice, which is pretty vital. Otherwise, tomorrow we'll all get a link to start choosing which ones you want to sign up for.
Nice. Thanks for that. Eric.
Thank you. Just kind of based on what you had brought up, I'm just wondering if we need to perhaps even set a time aside, or I want to make sure we're compliant with OPMA. If there's a time that we wanted to get together where there's nothing else scheduled, just to sort of discuss the learning that we had. I wonder if we need to. I know there's 24-hour notice, so I'm not sure if we should briefly talk about that now, or.
No, we have typically during the whole conference, I believe, Tracy, don't we put out a general statement that because we're all together at that point anyway, that kind of states that we would that all the directors would be attending this meeting.
Tracy? We do put a notice of quorum up. I did receive OPMA kind of enhanced that, and I think it might be because they're going virtual this year, that if you're not just meeting at a restaurant having a conversation about the conference and other things, you would be specifically meeting to talk about probably very specific things. So might be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe it came up. I believe it came up on the last
Got it.
Rosenthal, if I'm not mistaken,
Okay.
about, setting a specific time where we would meet up instead of a general time in order for
Got
us
it.
to,
Yep.
obviously not making decisions, but,
Sure.
discussing.
Yeah, there's it's a lot different than when we were all there in person. And so on that slide, there's a link to the OPMA just specific to this conference. So it's not the annual conference of our memory. This is
Right.
they're being very making sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's on all that. So I just encourage you to look through that. And I think the first thing would be for us to decide to look through the workshops you want to go to type thing, and then share that, we can share that somehow before. I know some of us are in the pre-conference workshops, which is the law conference and leading equity. I'm not quite sure who's all there. Then I want to make sure our students have a good understanding, and we're there for them to help them if they have questions. So
good point. And I'll just give right now full disclosure with the in light of the governor's kind of new rulings for the next 4 weeks. It obviously has impacted my day job quite substantially. So I may be doing a little limited time frame on that those, at least Thursday, Friday, as far as my availability to jump into classes. I may be doing 2 things at the same time during that day. So
the other very positive thing is that all the workshops are being recorded and captured, and so ones that we say are highly interested in, we have access to it for the whole next year, that we could have for a board workshop, or learning on down the line for all of us type thing also.
All right. Larry has his hand up over there.
Yeah, I agree. Since these are recorded, it gives us quite a bit of flexibility in what we can attend, and we can catch up on other workshops that we couldn't attend. So that's a pretty good deal. And I think upon close reading of that OPMA guideline from WASDA about having a chit-chat session among board members, we need to look at that very carefully. WASDA's emphasized it a couple times that it's it needs to be a public meeting and advertised this year. So take a look at that real closely, and I'm pretty flexible on whenever we might be able to do that, where there's not something critical going on that we need to attend.
Okay, great. Eric?
Yeah, I was just looking at the agenda through the Thursday, and it looks pretty packed with maybe a half hour here or there, but just to put it in the room, there is a good chunk of time. It looks like between 4:30 to 7 on Friday, where there might be some space available if I'm looking at the times right. So just wanted to share that might be a possible time to circle up, and we could certainly put out the necessary disclosures, and if folks want to jump in, they certainly can, but we could certainly discuss a few items at that point if it worked for everybody.
Yeah, that might be a thought, because that's what I'm thinking. A lot of times those are either meal times or before the big Friday kind of or Saturday dinner thing that we do. So we typically have some time there. That might be a good option leading into the weekend. I'll look at that. We got a couple of days that we can sort that out and maybe get that to Tracy so we can post that.
Okay. Yeah, and I just probably important. Certainly if we are going to I'd just love the opportunity for everyone to be able to attend. So I'd hate to schedule something where one person feels like they're torn between one or the other. So
Yeah,
that's that time stuck out at me because everyone would have that opportunity. So
sounds good.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Next up, so we did have our policy meeting last week. Does anybody have any questions on any particular policy that's listed here? Jim?
Yes, the 1810 and the 1821, or excuse me, 1820, 1810. There was a discussion on attaching a date and whether that be calendar year or school year and clarifying that. And I sent an item out either Friday morning or Thursday evening after our policy meeting with the last time that we did the board assessment. And so that was last December and December 16th. And then we had discussed some goals. And so I was real interested in hearing from Dr. Prine of her thoughts on ensuring that we have some dates out there that we're following up with goal decisions and so forth. But those are items that we should probably put some times or dates in those two policies is what I have.
Director Koo?
Yeah, and I would generally agree with Director Stoffer on what he's mentioning. It would do well to have some temporal bookends on that process. I would just offer for consideration that perhaps that would live under the procedures portion, not the policy necessarily.
Perfect. Yeah, I was just thinking the same as well. That that would fall probably under procedure piece of that. Anything else? Director Jeffries?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when we, at the policy workshop, I asked questions because the policy read at year's end, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant, whether that's a calendar year or a school year. So I thought that needed to be cleaned up so it's a little bit more defined.
Mm-hmm.
But just to keep it clear for future boards.
Yeah, at the conclusion of each year, right? That's correct. We did have that question, and I'm not sure if we got a clarification on what that specifically meant out of WASDA. But possibly before we get do an approval on this at our next board meeting, we can get at least that piece just as an understanding what that means. Jim?
Yes. Would you like me to reach out to WASDA with Abigail for the clarification, or what do you see the next steps? Because I can send a quick email, but just want to.
Sure, we can do that. Thanks. All right. If we don't have any other questions on the rest of those, as this is the first meeting, we won't need to do a full look through those as we did that at our last workshop, and then we'll have these set for approval for our next meeting. All right. And I think that's it for the regular agenda. Director Koo, I think you said you had something for the good of the order.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I do appreciate your accelerated approach through those policies. in the workshop we had. I was just reminded by the Sequim Middle School librarian, Loud Librarian Lawson, as she's known to some. There are 2 book fairs going on virtually right now that are to the benefit of our libraries that include Helen Haller and Sequim Middle School. So they're running active now through the 22nd, and she encourages folks to visit either school's website to participate.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. Well, with that said, we'll see all of you at the workshop tomorrow. With that, everybody have a.
Mr. Chair, is that
Yes.
4? Is that 4 or 4:30?
I believe it's 4 o'clock. Is that correct, Tracy?
I believe so as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yep, that's okay. No, not interrupting. Good for clarification. All right. Everybody have a good, warm, dry evening. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Shane.
Bye.
Good night.